and this is a class for designing your own brick stitch pendant. I'm here on behalf of John Bead and Michaels. This is a recorded class, and it will be available after the class to see again by visiting michaels.com/classes. And if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. And so once again, we're going to be making today these really pretty brick stitch pendants. Now the samples are done in Miyuki Delica size 11. And they're available at Michaels from John Bead. They come in a lot of really gorgeous colors. But I wanted to also point out that you can make these in any beads. And for our first demo, I'm going to use some size 8s beads so that you'll be able to see what I'm doing with a little more clarity over the camera. So I'm going to switch down and show you some of the other products that I'm using today. To my other camera here. All right, so starting off with just, I grabbed a few Delicas to show you a cool color combo that I came up with earlier. Really beautiful beads. And with those, I'm using Nymo thread and size 10 beading needles. You're also going to need some jump rings, wire guardians, and ball chain. So this is the ball chain from Bead Landing, wire guardians, jump rings from the Findings pack. And I'm also using some precision scissors. And when we start doing the jump rings, I'm going to use chain nose pliers. So I'll probably use a set of these. Okay. All right. So for anyone who's new to brick stitch, the way a brick stitch pattern is worked is you begin by ladder stitching the widest row in your pattern. So let's say your pattern, like our pattern today, has its widest point is 12 beads across. So in brick stitch, you always work from the widest point, and then you'll work up and down from that point. And so step one is always to ladder stitch the longest row. And so I'm going to start that. I'm going to show you with size 8 first, so that you can see just a little better. All right. And so a ladder stitch starts by picking up 2 beads. Get this out of the way. And bring those down. I've cut about 36 inches of thread, and I've left a 7-inch tail here. So 36 inches of your thread with a 7-inch tail. Come back up through the first bead that you added. And then turn and go through the second bead in the opposite direction. So we're kind of looping through them in a circle. And straighten that out there. And sometimes when I'm working with a ladder stitch, what I like to do is hold the first 2 beads in place. See how you can straighten them out a little bit while I work the next one. And that just makes all the threads a little extra tighter. So I picked up another bead going down through the second one, come back up through the third. And I'm going to hold these like that. And pull tight. So there's 3. And 4. And I'm working this in a solid color. But if you were following the pattern, which I'm going to do on the next sample, you will need to take a look at the pattern, measuring that longest middle row there, and you'd go lay your colors out A, B, C, and D, and then pick up in that order each of the colors. Okay. So far I've just picked up 4, and that's probably enough to demo this first step. So now I'm going to, working up from here, add the next row. So this is just me showing you brick stitch really quick before we do one of the other samples. I'm using size 8 seed beads so you can see the thread bridges. So each of these laddered stitches has a bridge over it where we looped our thread through. And so the first step in brick stitch is for each new row you pick up 2 beads and the needle under the second thread bridge. So that's the one after the 1 and 2. Pull tight. And come up through the second bead you added. Okay. When you pull tight, they'll sit side by side. Now the next step is to just pick up 1 bead and go under the next thread bridge. And then come back up through that same bead. Tight. Okay. And so you'll notice with every row you add, there'll be 1 less bead. So we added 4 rows as our starting, and now there's 3 on top of that. So now we can only fit 2 rows. So go ahead and do that. All right. So you'll see a pyramid shape starting to form. And on the samples that we made, this is where the wire guardian would go. You go up through the wire guardian and down. Reinforce that 1 time or 2 times. Come down the side and begin building brick stitch off the bottom. And so that's brick stitch in a nutshell. I'm going to start a new thread here. And once again, I'm using the, if I can remember where I put them, scissors here. Cut that. Okay. So thread your needle, cut about 36 inches thread. I'm starting over a new sample. And get your needle threaded. Okay. And so now I'm going to work a pattern. And I'm thinking I'll work this one here. So my first 2 beads are going to be an A and a B. So let me grab my beads here. Here's the A. And here's the B. So same as before, we pick up 2, leaving a 7-inch tail. I'm going to turn and go through the first bead added. And those will sit side by side. And turn and go down through the second one. Okay. And so the next bead in the pattern is a C. And I'm just using another piece of paper. You could also use a Post-it note. So we're going to add 2 C's. This be our C. And again, I'm working with size 8s just so you guys can see better. But the patterns are very beautiful in the delicas. Okay, so there's C, the first one. I'm going to do 1 more. And so looking at my pattern, I'll bring this up here. Okay, so I've done A, B, C, C. Now I need D and A. I'm going to add D and A. And Let's see, let's do a bright yellow for the D. So with ladder stitch, we're adding one bead coming through the last bead that we added, going tight, turning and coming up through the bead, as in this step. And so back to A, and A was my turquoise, so back to that one. And back up through that bead. And another A. And so now I'm just repeating the pattern in reverse. So this one. And then two of these color C. So there's just two more to go. There's color B and A, and then we'll have that first row done, which is that center row of the pattern, the one that's the longest. Okay, sorry, one more there. And there's that row. And so this is, this row is really loose. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten it up. And to do that, I'm gonna go back through each of the beads in the opposite direction of the thread. So starting with this one, going that way, and coming up to the next one. And I'm just gonna do that all the way to the end. And that will flatten out the row. And with brick stitch, you can also start, if you have a pattern that stacks the same number of beads on top of each other, you can do 2 at once, 3 at once. You can brick stitch with bugle beads as your ladder bead row. That's another really cool thing to do. Bugle beads are fun because the step I'm doing here, you never end up needing to do that because they sit right next to each other. And delicas as well. They do a better job than the round beads of making a perfect ladder stitch without having to reinforce it like I'm doing. But I kind of really like the look of a round bead too in brick stitch. It has a really pretty dimension to it. Okay, and now see how much better that is? Way better. And that I can work with. So building row 2. I'm gonna just build up. You can go either direction. If your pattern was different below or above, just note that, which direction you're headed. So I'm gonna cover this up and I know that I'm gonna go A, B, C, C. Let me get that far and then we'll bring the pattern back over. So starting with 2 beads. When you start your new row, you'll always pick up 2 beads and you'll skip the first thread bridge, you'll skip the first thread bridge here and go under the second one. Remember we picked up 2 beads, the first 2 beads in our pattern. And so we'll go under and pull tight. Come up to that second bead. And that looks pretty good. But if you wanted to, you can also go back through the first bead you added. And this is optional. It's just if you want that side bead to sit really straight. Now I'm going under that first thread bridge. It's hard to see, because it's covered by the beads above, but I'm going under the third one, pulling through. Now, actually I missed it, sorry guys. Now I went under it. Okay, pulling through and coming up through the second bead. So watch what happens when I do that. See how this one's kind of sideways. So I went back down through the first one, under that first thread bridge, pull tight, and it sits a lot flatter in plain. So when you're adding the next row above it, you won't get that look where they kind of bend together. If you've seen that in some of my early brick stitch looks like that a little bit. All right, and so I know my next pattern color is going to be C. And so this this is the third thread bridge that I'm going under, and I'm picking up just one bead for this part. So under there. So another C. There we go. Okay, and so the next color here, after A, B, C, C is D, A, and then I'm going to repeat it. So here's a D. A. And here's a D. And so this is just a really fun way to create something that is 100% unique. You can draw your own patterns and you can make them different shapes. They don't have to be diamonds. They can be round circles, squares. I've seen people do, like animals and leaves, and the sky is the limit. Some really advanced brick stitch also has like multiple dimensions to it. They've got, like shapes made, actual shapes, which is very cool. And under the second to last thread bridge here, almost to the end of this row. Okay. And one more. So you'll see with every row you add, there will be one less bead. And so it goes really fast. I'm going to show you one more row so you can get the hang of that. So now I'm stepping up to the next row. You always start with 2 beads. And with each new row you start. You can go under the second thread bridge. Come up through that second bead. And then to make that one sit just a little more in plane, come back down through that first bead and try to pick up the thread bridge that is just under it. And then come up through that second bead. And that's all there is to it. And then the rest of the beads, you just add them in the order of your pattern. And keep building until you reach the top row. Your top row will have 2 beads on top. And from there, you add the wire guardian. Did anybody have any questions about brick stitch before? What's the largest and smallest size beads? So the smallest are the size 11 delicas. And looking over here. This is one that's made with delicas. They're pretty tiny, but they're cylindrical. So they make stitching a dream. They just lock right in place. Also really beautiful for peyote stitch. The next size up in beads would be size 11 rounds. I can show you some of those I have in here. A size 11 round bead will be a little bit bigger than a delica, but you'll still have a really fine look. And then after that, there's 10s, which are just a little bit bigger than the ones I showed you. These are 8s. And above that, there's size 6. You could work this pattern in the 6. And it would look really neat. I would like to see that. If anyone does it, please share it. I forgot to mention at the beginning, you can share your creations with hashtag #MakeItWithMichaels, and also put hashtag John Bead. And love seeing what you guys make, especially for this project, because there's a really fun part here at the end where we can sketch our own design. I may not be able to get the entire design complete in this class, but I will post it later. I'll finish it and post it. Okay, so I'm coming to the end of row 3. And there was just one more trick I wanted to show you guys before we move on to putting wire guardians on. So the next row has 3A as the first set. And bring that through there. Something you can do to make that little step that I was showing you faster is go ahead and just come down through that first bead and then bring your needle behind the work. So see what I'm doing here, I'm bringing it behind the work. And I'm gonna pick up that bridge a little easier by pushing this way and doing a turn. You can see I'm under that thread bridge there. Just pull tight and come up through the second one. I'm just going to set it down so you can see. There it goes. So really nice. It just makes it a little cleaner and the beads stack very, I don't know, just in a way that makes it easier to add that next row, I feel like. And so does anyone have any other questions about brick stitch or BC beads? Well, I just quickly go through these guys here. I do have a PDF. In the PDF, there's a step-by-step of ladder stitch and a step-by-step of brick stitch. And it shows all the steps we just did. If you want to go through that after class, that'll be available, and you can also watch the replay.
Hi, Danielle, it's Carmi from John Bead.
Hey.
Danielle, one of the questions would be, would you mind repeating how you tighten the first bead when you do an additional row? Yes. And the question would be, how do they start the opposite side?
Yep, we're gonna start that. And what I would like to do is show that turn again really quick. So I'm just speeding to the end of this row. And I'll show you guys that, and then I'll show you how to get to the bottom. There's 2 ways you can do it. I stitch down from when I add the wire guarding at the top, and then I stitch down to the bottom. But you could also, when you started the stitch, instead of leaving a 7-inch tail like we did, you could leave 25, 28 inches and use that thread to build the bottom. And I got that tip from another beader that I admire. That's how she does it. I always forget. I'm in a hurry when I get started, and I do my usual 7-inch weave in a bull tail, and I keep going, which works fine. It just means that when you're building the first part of your pyramid, you're working with more thread than you would otherwise have to. And that actually reminds me, adding in thread. I'm going to show you that too. And it looks like we're doing great on time, so I'll show you the adding in thread part. Okay, so showing that turn one more time. Okay, so my next row starts with 2A. I'm going to pick up 2A. And so there's 2 thread bridges here. I'm going under the second one. And tighten. And then come up through that second bead. And you'll see here what happens is it kind of sits a little bit sideways. And so to get it not to do that, I was showing you guys first the long way and then the shorthand way. The shorthand way to do it would be to just come down, kind of bring your needle behind the work. See, I'm down through this first bead, and then I'm pushing against the work, and I capture the thread bridge without really having to look at it and search for it. But the other way you can do it is to go ahead and come all the way down through that first bead, and then just search for it by bringing your needle behind the work, and you'll know when you've got the thread bridge because the needle won't push up. And pull tight, come up through the second one. And I can show that one more time. The rows are getting really short now, so it'd be super easy for me to get to the other side and show you that one more time. That was one of the things in my early brick stitch that used to frustrate me was the way that it would stack on the side, and now they're all kind of turned forward on each other, so you couldn't get a flat, like a flat plane on top. If that makes any sense. So I'm just following the pattern now. I'm just going really quick through each of the pattern steps, which is that was 2C. I've got one more bead to go, and then there will be 2 more A. Oops, that's a bead. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm going to show that turn one more time, if that's okay with everybody. I think that was one of the more popular tips today. So going through an A and a B for the next one. So according to my pattern, I use an A and a B. And go under the second thread bridge and pull tight. Come up through second bead, down to the first bead, picking up the thread bridge underneath it. Oops, there we go. I'm trying to get close to the camera so you guys can see it. There you go. Okay. Pull through. And up through the second bead. And that's all you got to do. And from there on, for the rest of that row, it's just adding the 1 bead. So does anyone else have any questions about the turn or beads? Hope everyone's thinking about ideas for what they want to draw on the I should show you guys that next. Let me do this really quick. I'm going at speed here. So the pattern I'm working is almost done on the top. I just did that. I just did this row. I'm gonna put this on top so you can see it. So that was the row I just did. So I just have a few more rows to go. And I wanted to give you guys a tip with using wire guardians. So wire guardians are, they're kind of the way to go with this design. But you could also take a loop of seed beads and make a loop at the top. Maybe 4 size 10 seed beads if you're using these 8s like I am. If you're using delicas, you'll want to use some size 11 rounds to make your loop. And I say that because the delicas, when you can make a loop with the delicas, but they're kind of they're cylindrical, so they don't form around top. That said, I see lots of really beautiful designers out there doing that, and they make it look great. So, of course, definitely try your ideas. But with the wire guardian, I think it's better to use that because you can, pull off a jump ring and add a new jump ring a little bit easier than the seed beads and thread running through the seed beads. I think it makes the charm dangle more as well. It will kind of move a lot. Okay, another row. So the wire guardians, let me show you guys those again. They look like this. They're perfect size for getting a size 10 beading needle through. Works great. You can probably even get size up if you wanted to for thicker threads, but this works great for Nymo. It works great for wildfire. You can get any size thread through these. Oops. I'm finding beads everywhere. So when you're using size 8 seed beads with the wire guardian, let me show you guys something really quick. It's going to sink right into it. So if you're going to use, with delicas, you don't have to worry about this. The size 10s and size 11 rounds, you don't have to worry about this. But 8 and up, your wire guardian is going to hide in the bead. So you're going to need to get creative with adding it. So I'm going to weave to the center here so I can show you guys adding it on a real piece. So as I showed you before, if I was to try to do that, it would just sink right into the bead. So I'm going to grab some size 11s. And let's see, where are those here? Those are 10s. 10s will work. 10s are cute. Let's use 10s. 10s or 11s will work fine. And I'm going to pick up one bead. Sorry. And then stitch through the wire guardian. Okay. So stitch through the wire guardian after picking up one bead. It could be an 11 or a 10. And then take a look at where it's sitting. For delicas, that's perfect. See, for a delica, the width is just right. But I need this to be wider. So I'm going to bring the chain nose pliers over. I'm going to push down on this part. And open the wire guardian just a little bit. Don't go crazy, because it will really respond to the pliers. There we go. About like that. And then test it. See the width. How does that look? It's working for me. Yeah, I think that's good. So I'm going to go with that. Pick up, go down through the wire guardian. And then one more time. And come down through the top bead here. And so on the pattern, I would be doing this at the top on just 2 beads. But I'm just working it here so I can have time to show you guys the next idea. So to reinforce this, I'm going to come up through, see I came down through this one, go up through the one that's next to it, all the way through the bead and the wire guardian. There we go. And come back down. You'll want to repeat that step that I just did at least one more time. So come back up through and go around. And then in this design, you would be here and just travel all the way down to the bottom bead. So what I'm going to do here is just quickly weave over to that. Travel all the way down the side. And now flip it. Bring your pattern over, flip your pattern, and start from the next row there, and then just build to the bottom. Let's see, we're at 3:35, so we could do a delica demo. If you guys want to see these with delicas, it gets a little smaller, but now that you've seen the stitch done on a big bead, I feel like that's something we could do, and it would work really well. And while we're thinking about it, I'll show you guys this is in the PDF handout. And what you can do with this is take some colored pencils and create your own design. And so one of the things we talked about doing last week was this crazy idea of, does anyone have some shape they think would be cool? And I'll try to sketch it, and then I'll try to make it with Delica's, and I'll post it later. So, and we'll start it today. So if no one has any ideas, I was just going to go with color and just kind of create a random design, but I'll give you guys a few minutes to think about that. Well, someone said a heart. Hearts are really fun to do in brick stitch, and they're easy, and they're kind of they're coming into that season now, so think about that. Yeah, that would be great. Let's do a heart. And I could actually, yeah, I could overlap them, so like 3 hearts. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna put a coaster under here. So that's hard to color on. But let's do like. So whenever I'm making a heart shapes are really fun because they're geometric in a way that works with a pixelated photograph. The hardest thing to do in pixels for me is circles. And I'll color in these next 3. And just let's see, if we did an overlapping one, how would that look? Kind of. Well, I'll keep it simple this time. I'm not 100% sure. I would end up erasing a little bit to get that right. But I'm gonna color this in here really quick. And we'll make it a little wider here. And so from here, we'll just come straight down and meet at a point. So yeah, this is a great idea. And so the point here can be 1 bead wide. I'll just shade that in a little bit. I don't know, what do you guys think? Heartish, it looks like a heart. Could even make it really pointy, but I kind of like the round top there. Another idea would be to put a little heart up here. Maybe we could do that. Oh, that's kind of cute. So whatever you guys can think of, that looks like kind of like a flame on top. I'm not sure. Really cute. But let's start it. So how would you start that? You just colored in your masterpiece. And to start that, you would want to work from the longest row, which on this pattern we know is 12 beads across. So you would start with, I'm going to work with a while, let's see, black thread so you guys can see it. And find some scissors here. And size 10 beading needle. And in case anyone missed the beginning, the thread that I'm using and the needles. I'm using the Nymo here. This is Earth Pack. It's called Earth. And these are the beading needles that I'm using. And so threading this, I usually do kind of moisten the end and get that to go through the needle a little better. Okay. All right, so the pattern says I'm going to need 2 white beads and then a red bead for my first beads. So let's get the white beads here. There's the white ones and the red ones. Oh, you guys are so nice. I saw that nice comment there. Thank you. It is really nice to hear that people are enjoying the class. Okay, so what I did is I picked up 2 seed beads and went back through the first one. And so that made them lay side by side. And I know these are really small guys. Sorry. These are the delicas. But look how easily they ladder. There's none of that wonkiness that was happening with the round beads. It's all about cylinder beads these days. All right, going through here. Oops, there we go. And then back down to the second one. Sorry, the third one. Everyone see that okay? I've got my first 3 beads laddered. The next one's red. In fact, it's going to be red for a while. It's going to be red for how many beads here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 beads. And I'm not sure how far we'll get on this, but I will definitely post it after. Yeah, these are, I saw that comment there that the delicas they're the smallest bead that I work with currently. And so beautiful results. Really tough to see on video. And I'm super nearsighted, so the little beads I don't have any problem working with them, but it's just sharing them that's hard. And that's pretty much all, just ladder stitch. Does everyone want to see the finish of that, or should I move on to showing other stuff? It says, I'm at 4, so I would need to do 4 more of these. I feel like I might be boring you guys going through all these beads. So let me know if you would like me to speed this up.
Hi, Danielle, it's Carmi. I just want to let you know from the sidebar, there's a question which you've had before is, do you suggest using a contrasting color for the thread?
I don't know. I'm just doing this for the camera. I would use the white thread if I was for this design specifically, because it's going to have white edges all around. But that said, I have used contrasting thread on purpose in the past, and it has a really cool design effect. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn. I like both. This is the great thing about jewelry design, is it you can get exactly the result that that you dreamt up, and it's your own. I think that's what's so fun about all crafts in general.
Danielle, I think the biggest question you're getting today is about moving on to a second row, third row, etc. So yeah. When you do that, if you could just talk about the thread bridge one more time, and I know everyone can then watch it again if they watch the recording.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm at the end of this row. So let me show you guys that really quick. And sorry, I forgot to go through that second bead. So all I'm doing right now is laddering 12 beads in a row according to that pattern that we just drew. And that was my last bead. I do kind of, it makes it harder for you guys to see, but I pinch the work while I'm adding each new bead to make it stay straight. But if you want to be doubly sure that it's exactly perfect, you can go back through the whole row. And I'm showing you guys that now. So I went down through the second. There's a third. Just going down through all of them. And that makes them just sit in a perfect row. So lately I've been working with the new kind of pearl mixes that are out in Michael's now. The John Bead Czech glass beads have the most gorgeous mixes I've ever seen. And one of the pearl mixes has a crystal in it, a regular flat white, a matte white, and this pearlized one. And so I just took all those beads and stitched them up together, and it looked really amazing. Oh, I just lost my light, guys. It got very dark. We're having windstorms. It's died down now, but earlier today it was really windy. Like the windows are rattling in their frames. It's not summer anymore. I don't know when that happened. Okay. Sorry, guys, taking me a minute I unthreaded my needle. Okay. These beads are so tiny. There you go. I'm gonna add some light. There we go. Ah, much better. Okay. First row done. So now how would you add your next row? So the first 2 beads in my next row are also 2A beads. So I'll pick up the 2 A's. And I'm just referring to that pattern we just drew. I moved my paper up 1, picked up 2 beads. So skip the first thread bridge here and go through the second one. Come up through that one. And what you'll see is that the bead on the sides is just kind of loose and it's kind of leaning in. And so to straighten that out, go back down through that first bead. And then you remember the thread bridges that were there? We went through the second one. I'm going to go through that first thread bridge. So going underneath, essentially in between these 2 beads. And pull through. And now come up through the second bead. Move that over. Sorry, I tangled my thread around there. Okay. I'm gonna put it down, show you guys what happens when you pull that last step. And it sits pretty tightly. I'm gonna pull even tighter here. And now the thread is hidden too. And so that's the turn, and then you would just pick up 1 bead and stitch to the end of the row. Should I show that? I can show that really quick. So picking up 1 bead, the next bead in my pattern is a red one, is a B. And so we're on the 3rd thread bridge now. Just picking up 1 bead, going under the 3rd. So with every new row, you're going to add 2, and then each subsequent bead after that is just 1, all the way to the end of the row. You only ever need 2 at the start of a row. And that turn is only necessary at the start, because you see each of these new ones will sit really nicely. And that's where the cylinder beads are just they're just so magical. They have the same exact shape, so you end up with a perfectly straight line. All right.
Hi, Danielle. Just checking in with Carmi. You have about 10 minutes, and there are 2 questions that you're getting.
Okay.
Is number 1, would you definitely show people what would happen if they run out of thread, and maybe on the bigger piece so that they can see it?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Last, I know they want to see you add the charm.
Oh yeah, okay, let's do that. So I'm gonna start with adding thread, and I'll bring the big piece over again. I'm gonna trim that. Okay. So taking a new piece of thread here, I'll try not to make it too long. Trim that. And I actually, when I was over here, I cut that extra thread. That was my old working thread. I didn't mean to do that. I should have left it there. Typically when I weave something in, I leave the old thread so I can see where I was. So that should still be there. But to add new thread, just come up. In brick stitch, you can come up through any bead because we're going to weave around. I might have gotten a knot there. There we go. Okay, so come up through there. You don't have to leave very much tail. This is just an indicator of when this stops moving, you know you've woven it in enough. But the first thing I usually do is just change direction right away because it's so loose. With every pull through, you're going to lose that thread. So now it's just a little tighter. I feel safe making the tail a little shorter now. And change direction again. And so it doesn't matter what beads you weave into. Just choose some. And all I've done so far is I'm almost kind of just laddering through, change direction through this same row over and over again. Let me see if I've got a knot here that won't work. So if you get a knot, here's an excellent way to show getting knots out. Often my tail thread will do that to me. So just before you pull too tightly, get back in there with, you know, maybe use this end of the needle to do that and just pull. Okay. There we go. Okay. Not saved. And so the tail's still moving. See how I can still pull that? So I know I need to do more. So what I'm going to do is change direction again. And now I'm going to put some real estate between those turns. So I'm going to go up one more and turn and come down through this one. Okay, now let's see what happens. Do another test here. Ah, there we go. I'm pulling pretty tightly. This isn't moving. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that, pushing down with the scissors, pulling up with the thread. And if you guys remember, my tail thread that I wasn't supposed to cut, but I already cut, was over here. My old working thread was exiting from here. So I'm going to weave to that point. And then just turn direction one more time just to get me over there. Okay. And now I'm in position to start the next row. So that's how easy adding thread is. And what you would do with your working thread that was here is I would build a few rows and then weave it into the new rows. But that's it, yeah. Does anyone else want to see any other demos or the charm? Actually, yes, putting charms on. So there are so many really beautiful charms to choose from over at the craft store. At Michael's Craft Stores has an entire wall of them. And when I take my son in there, he has to buy all the charms. He loves them. But one of the greatest things about this design is you can change the charms. So here's a finished one. And at the top, I opened and closed a jump ring, and I'll show you guys that really quick. So this is from, these are jump rings from one of the findings packs. You can use jump rings, whatever color you like, whatever you have handy. and choose the one you'd like to be the top. Put it on the ball chain and then closing it. And so what I'm using is bent nose and flat nose. And that's just my preference for pliers when I'm doing jump rings. And that's pretty tight there. Might straighten that out. And so to add a charm, I'll show you guys some examples of charms. One of the cool things that I've seen are these packs. And some of the coolest tortoise ones. How cool are those? Those are so neat. But there's also these little individual charms. And these are the ones that my little guy is really excited about, but they come as enameled. And actually that's really beautiful. I might use that one, but there's so many. I mean, there's birds and stars. I found a tree. I happen to have a lot of these because my son just piles them in the cart, but it's a really pretty shell. It has an opal finish on it. Anyway, I could go to, this is the favorite thing to do is a switch charm, so I could go to town on that. But we're gonna try this one because this one's really cool. Now some of the charms come with a lobster claw, save that, but we don't need it for this design. So I'm just gonna go ahead and remove it. So lobster claw removed. On the wire guardian. And laterally closing the jump ring there. Totally different look, same necklace. I actually really like that, that's pretty.
Danielle, you're right on time.
Perfect timing, all right. I always get nervous that I'm not gonna make the time work out, so I'm like, yay. So hi everybody, I can see everyone now. I see Loretta and Seema, hi guys. All right, so for the next minute, I was gonna introduce next week's project really quick. So we've got earrings next week. These are the little star mandalas that are made with some size 6 and some size 11 seed beads. Hold this up a little better, sorry. Really fun design. You can do them in any colors you'd like. And they don't take very long. They're really fast. So we'll have some fun. We'll experiment with colors for that. And then after that, on the 27th, we're gonna do a peyote stitch necklace, which is a chain made out of peyote stitch. And then we add some loops and charms. It can also be made for just a single pendant. And then also on here is last week's class. If you missed last week's class, it's currently on the website, michaels.com/classes. I think there's a way you can now browse straight to the jewelry videos and you'll find it easier that way. PDFs are in the comments. That was our bangles from last week. All right, so that's everything. I would love to see what you guys create. If you can make it with Michaels and tag John Bead when you post, love to see what you make. And thank you so much for joining class tonight. Have a good evening, everyone.